I'd like to talk to you about a problem that sometimes arises with word meaning. This problem is rare, and the fact that it's rare raises interesting questions about how word meaning works. So here's an example of what I'm talking about. For the longest time, I thought that cloud formation kind of streaming behind a jet plane, I thought that was called a jet stream. Well, I still kind of think I was logical in thinking that that's what the word stream means, but I was wrong. Actually, the thing behind a plane is called a contrail. Now, here's an important point. The reason that I was wrong about that isn't exactly that dictionaries would disagree with me. The reason that I was wrong is that people in general would call that thing a contrail. So the key thing here is that this was just my weird thing that I was doing by myself. If I was part of a whole community where everybody called that thing a jet stream, then that would be the meaning of the word jet stream. But I was alone in this, and so I was just being a weirdo. And this thing is actually called a contrail. So that was my mistake. This kind of thing has happened to other people as well. For example, I know someone who sent an invitation that was worded kind of like this: You are invited to a party in lieu of Mark Twain's birthday. And that seemed odd to me because actually, in lieu of, most people who use it to mean instead of. But you can tell in the wording of this invitation that the person thinks that in lieu of means something else. And, for these kinds of somewhat unusual words or expressions, such as jet stream or in lieu of, it kind of makes sense that people might make a wrong guess about what they mean. But it can happen with more ordinary words as well. So I brought up the issue of these two words, jet stream and in lieu of, in a class, and asked students if they had any examples like that. And a young man raised his hand and said, "Oh, yes, until quite recently, I thought that approximately meant exactly." And when he said that, someone else in the class raised their hand and said, "Oh, yeah, I did too." But, actually, they're very much in the minority on that. For the most part, people have separate meanings for the words approximately and exactly. But you can see where that would arise. You might be on a road trip and ask, "Hey, how long is it going to take to get there?" And maybe they tell you, "Oh, approximately 2 hours." And you think, "Oh, they're telling me the exact amount of time it's going to take." And maybe there's no reason to find out that that's not what they meant. So this can happen. And even with more ordinary words than that, how about with a noun? So, another former student mentioned that for a long time she had thought that these are anchovies. You see, this is a pizza related difficulty, isn't it? Because both olives and anchovies could occur on pizza. She didn't like either one, so she would always order pizza and say, "Hold the anchovies." She gets a pizza without olives and never finds out that that's not what most people mean by anchovies. So here we've seen some examples. Now, what does all this mean? Now, you know thousands of words. The words that you recognize could be as many as 20 or 30,000. There's some individual variation there. And all of that ordinary vocabulary you learned by hearing words in context, not by looking them up in dictionaries. Okay, there are a few things that you looked up in dictionaries, but most of the thousands of words that you picked up. You didn't consult a dictionary to learn them. And sometimes our guesses, as we've seen, are wrong. This tells us that learning and knowing words is not a trivial task, even though it may seem simple. And the mistakes are so rare. So this brings up the question of, how do we get this right most of the time? How does learning and knowing what words mean work?